All right, so as we move into chapter 2, we learn our first fundamental foundational mindfulness practice, a concentration practice known as focused attention. And this is something that you're invited to practice for 6 minutes, and then in time, as you choose, working your way up to 12 minutes or 18 minutes or longer or shorter, but starting with 6 minutes. And so, whereas in chapter 1, we were learning to establish a routine, to take 3 minutes, to learn to sit without necessarily all of our devices around us, or with the ability to just get up and do something if we choose to, a little bit more of an intentional sitting for the sake of sitting and being present for our experience. And now we're learning a guided practice that is one of the methodologies for orienting ourselves a little bit more solidly planted in the present moment, being attentive to what arises both within us and around us. And the instructions, as is the case with many mindfulness and other meditative instructions, are really pointers to sort of stay in that more present-oriented state. The thing we'll talk about now for a few moments is, where do I sit? How do I sit? And there are an enormous number of traditions and approaches to sitting on cushions, sitting on benches, sitting on backjacks, sitting on chairs, sitting on the ground, sitting on mats. And the idea, I think, at this stage is to give a little thought to sitting in a way that's comfortable for you, practical, accessible, likely to endure. Of course, you can always mix it up and change it around, but it could be that just sitting in a chair is a good place to start, because the chairs are around. If you find a place in your home where you are going to be sitting on a regular basis, to have a chair there, you're not going to go searching, you don't have to spend any more money, and stuff like that. But a couple of ideas around that and a couple of options. The first is perhaps have that chair moved in a direction or in a place that is not typical for where you normally sit in that chair. This is because we want to have it where there's something, a little bit of a ritual, a little bit of a shift from the same old place and view and perceptions that we're going to have in that chair. So that we don't just fall into or is likely to fall into an automatic pilot, familiarity. So think about how you might move it around. It could be that you move it because you want to be sitting looking out a window. It could be that you turn it towards a wall. It could be that you just turn it around. Of course, if it's at a desk with a computer and a phone and phones and things like that, probably good to turn it away from the technology or the pull of technology. So that's one thing. Secondly, it's helpful to have a chair that isn't going to have you too comfortable. That is, a chair that's not too likely to be reclining or too many cushions, so that you're sort of with a softer back and not necessarily in a more upright and steady, stable, noble, dignified kind of posture that you in some respects maintain. That is, the intentionality, the awareness keeps you up in this regard. We don't want to be slouched, and we don't want to be necessarily laying back. Of course, please let your body and the pain and your own knowing of you make it so that you're comfortable. So it's sort of this sweet spot, not too rigid, not slouched, somewhere in between. And then, of course, during the course of a sitting, or a period of practice, as your body begins to sort of relax and you forget about it, you have an opportunity to remember. But the idea is to have it be where it's an intentional posture, a conscious posture, at least at the start. And whether or not you sit forward from the back of the chair or whether you lean back is entirely, of course, up to you. But there is a slight difference. One has it where you hold that intentional form a little bit more fully, and the other doesn't ask as much of you. And this in many ways might be, as much as anything, a matter of comfort. So that's the sitting. Keep it simple, with maybe a little bit of an shift to keep it a little bit out of the routine that you're familiar with. Of course, if you're sitting on a cushion, and there's readings that you can look to on different approaches to sitting on a cushion, there is value to sitting on a cushion, meaning the typical sort of people in a meditation hall sitting on a cushion, because it can allow you to have a very steady posture. We're sort of talked about as like a tripod. Your knees are out in front of you crossed, your bottom is up, you're leaning down in a somewhat forward way, and you might find that to be interesting and useful, and also maybe a little different, so that the practice you do in the morning or whenever you do during the day feels a little special. Ultimately, it's ordinary. You're just sitting and paying attention. But it's nice to have it where I think in establishing something new, there's something compelling about it. And so you might want to get a cushion for $40 or $50 or $25 or whatever it might be, for that purpose. And again, put it somewhere that is like the place that you'll go to, and it can remind you when you see the cushion or the bench. There's meditation benches, and there's other ways of doing that. So just some ideas for starting your practice with, in chapter 2, the focused attention practice, sitting for 6 minutes or 12 minutes or 18 minutes, listening to the guided practice, and doing so on a regular basis in a similar place at a similar time. That's what's suggested. It's not always doable, but tends to be helpful for establishing that regularity of the practice. Wishing you well.